We're now joined by Sebi Salazar, doing a wonderful job on the pre-game and post-game coverage last night around this game. Welcome in, Sebi. Actually, that is exactly where we want to start, because Stevie has a question of his own when we do talk about the weather on the night and the fact that the game was actually played in Columbus, Stevie.
Yeah, I don't understand it whatsoever. It makes no sense to take a team who, quite frankly, not one of them would get in your side, to take them to a cold weather climate because you think that's going to give you an advantage, because that can be the only reason. I'd also like to know, whose decision is it? Is it Greg Berhalter's decision? Or is it these typical officials that know nothing about football who decide that, well, we normally do that, so let's do it for no apparent reason? Because I understand if you're playing against a Mexico who is completely the opposite. They've generally got the better players, and so that's why you take them to a cold place to try and equalise the game. You don't take a team that you should be able to beat 4 and 5-0 to a cold place that equalises the game against yourself. That makes no sense whatsoever.
So, Stevie, down as far as the decision makers go, right? It's a group effort. The U.S. Soccer Federation are the ones that takes it. Greg Berhalter definitely has a seat at the table, right? He's not out of the loop in terms of where this is going to be played. I'll explain to you the kind of three things the Federation is looking at here. And credit to Canada Federation, because they may have played a little gamesmanship with this. They waited till the last possible second to announce they were going to play the game against the United States in Hamilton, Ontario. So at that point, the U.S. had very few options if they wanted to stay in the same time zone and limit that travel for the European players. And Columbus was really the best option. On top of that, the U.S. Soccer Federation does not want to play games in places where they think they're going to get a large number of opposing fans. They look at the demographics of these cities. And Stevie, I live in Washington, D.C. I've been to a U.S. El Salvador game at RFK Stadium, and it's 60-40 El Salvador fans, and that might be generous. It was 90-10 last night, U.S. fans, and that was an advantage for the U.S. team. And I think, to your point about the weather... No, and to the point about the weather, Stevie, you're totally right. Why would you even take the risk to level the playing field for a team like Honduras? But it was the rhetoric all week that Greg Berhalter and the players were putting out El Salvador, that the players were putting out that it was going to be tough on these Central American players as they were coming up. And I think they really bought into it. So whether it worked or not, I don't know. We can discuss that in the performance. But that's why the U.S. Soccer Federation chose Columbus. It wasn't for the benefit of the broadcast, I'll tell you that much.
Can I just say one thing? I find it interesting that Seb, and he's right in what he says, but I think it tells you something. His opening line was, well, the way they look at it is there's three criteria. Hold on a second. It should be one criteria, and guess what that is? How do we win this game? Full stop. Not three, one. That just tells you all you need to know.
Shouldn't they comfortably be winning a game like this, Seb?
Say that again, Kay?
Should they comfortably be winning a game against El Salvador, this US side?
No, to Stevie's point, there's not a player in the El Salvador team that gets, not only in the US 11, in the US full 28-man squad that came in. If they played this game in ideal conditions 10 times, the US wins 9.5 out of 10 times, and they probably win by 2 goals or more in most of those games. They do win comfortably. It was a roll of the dice, and I think I agree with you, Stevie. An unnecessary roll of the dice when you consider who the opponent is. You should be able to beat El Salvador anywhere in the United States. And I would put the question back to you. I don't think there's a player in the world, no matter where they were coming from in terms of cold temperatures, that would have wanted to be put in this situation. You want to go back and play somewhere in the sun you want to enjoy. And that certainly was not an enjoyable experience last night. And you saw it in the game, because I think the slow start for the United States, and it was a slow start to the game for both teams, but that definitely benefited El Salvador. That's always going to benefit the road underdog.
Did Berhalter get his lineup right, Sebi? We didn't see Ricardo Pepi from the start. We saw Christian Pulisic brought off just after the hour mark.
Jesus Ferreira was the shock surprise, right? Everybody was really surprised to see him in there at the number 9. He had 2 good chances, 1 golden chance, and he didn't take it. So Greg Berhalter rolling the dice there, you can say that did not work. I think the one thing that people will point to is, other than that decision, it was the Greg Berhalter lineup that has been most accepted by U.S. men's national team fans. We got the new name, MMA midfield. McKennie, Musa, and Adams finally got to see them. I don't think they played as well as people had hoped, but that is the trio that everybody wants to see. And we got a pretty young back line with the exception of Walker Zimmerman, who has made a real case for himself in the center of that defense.
Berhalter said after the game, Stevie, when he was asked about Christian Pulisic, that overall he was happy with what he saw, but they are waiting to see him get back to his best form. Should Christian Pulisic be turning it on in games like this?
I'll tell you what, let's help Christian get to his best form by taking him off the field. That seems like a great idea, doesn't it? How's Christian Pulisic, in my opinion, half of his problem is he hasn't had regular football and enough time on the field. Well, guess what? Leave him on the field. You telling me he can't play? You telling me he can't play in these 3 games, one after the other? Seriously? Seriously?
Do you think that psychologically the problems that he's having at Chelsea are affecting him here on this stage too?
Well, I'll tell you what. If he is having problems psychologically because A, he's either not starting with Chelsea or he's getting taken off, and I can assure you, I've never met one single football player who likes getting taken off. So if Christian Pulisic is having problems mentally, which we don't know whether he is or not, he's certainly not at his best, but he could be a strong kid and fight his way through it. But I tell you what, if he is, pulling him off against El Salvador in an American jersey before the end of the game and before the game's won, do you think that's going to do him any favours? Absolutely not.
Sebi?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the press conference the day before the game, and he was really candid about how he was feeling at Chelsea. He doesn't seem like a happy camper there under Thomas Tuchel, and obviously we know he's not the only attacking player in that category. But when you talk about his performance last night, he was a frustrated character, especially in those first 45 minutes. When you see the frustration come out of a player, and I got to be honest, I expected the opposite based on what he said in that press conference. He said he was looking forward to stepping away from Chelsea. I thought, okay, the U.S. men's national team environment, this situation, his best position in theory is going to bring the best out of him, but it didn't. And yet, if we look at the whole qualifying campaign and even the summer with the big tournaments, Nations League, he didn't participate in Gold Cup. His performances are not great performances on the whole. He's not dominating games as he has for the U.S. in the past. He's providing big moments. And so I think what we saw last night was pretty much what we've seen throughout qualifying, just missing that big moment.
We heard John Champion, as you'll probably heard yourself there, Sebi, talking about the inexperience in this squad. Can it be an excuse for when things don't go their way?
Well, we talked about it on the post-game show last night. Jermaine Jones talked about it. But I think one of the things that these guys point out as well when you want to ask questions as to why this team with this greatest generation of American talent ever isn't looking like it, is just down to the rotation, the chopping and changing that Greg Berhalter is doing and maybe having to do because of the nature of these windows. You got 3 games in 7 days. But I think we clearly have not seen the best of this U.S. team. And if you look at that lineup last night, you know, who's your veteran there? Walker Zimmerman? Yeah, he's 28 years old, but he's by no means an internationally experienced veteran. So I think there is some international experience that's lacking in that team. But these growing pains are not costing them. They're going to qualify for this World Cup, and they're going to qualify for this World Cup comfortably. I don't think that's in doubt. And when you look back, again, at where we were 4 years ago, at this time, we were getting ready to watch the U.S. miss a World Cup. So for all of the criticisms of the performances, the aesthetics, and all that, at the end of the day, you cannot criticize the results that Greg Berhalter has brought.
It's really finishing with 3 points, Stevie. However it may happen, isn't that what's important?
Absolutely. The only thing, listen, regardless of how the US plays, it's not about the way they play. Listen, if they, I've said it before, if they play like Brazil but just can't score, then what we're going to say? You know, I couldn't care less if my country are horrible, but they get the job done. That's the most important thing. And from there, then you can start building. Listen, we're being critical, which we should be because it wasn't a great performance. But the question was, what's more important? As we've been talking about, where the games are played, whatever it may be, the only thing that really matters is putting the US in a position to win and win regardless of how they play.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.